What is a man? What has he got? If not himself, then he has none to do the things he truly feels, and not the word to one who kneels. The record shows I took the blows and did it my way. When the going gets rough, the vicissitudes of life churn your dreams into a positive maelstrom of despair. Be not of faint heart. Remember the words of that song. Do what you believe is right, and do it your way. 2 years ago, I went through such a period of desolation. My career was going downhill faster than a rabbit with a promise. I just couldn't raise a laugh anywhere. I played one theatre, and the silence I endured throughout the whole of my act was so intense. The mere shifting of a cough lozenge from one molar to another reverberated like a musket volley. Nothing went right. I invested a lot of money in a company that made ladies' bonnets, and the government cancelled Easter. But I maintained dignity. I tried to bend frozen turkeys into the shape of boomerangs. Then I used to cross them with kangaroos. The idea was to produce a bird you could stuff from the outside. It didn't work. All I got was an omelette you couldn't throw away. And then tragedy struck. The wife's mother was brought home. She'd had an accident at work. Bit of a messy affair. Apparently a hot rivet had dropped down her drawers and she'd fell off the oil rig. Hell of a job to rescue her. Because she's so fat, she capsized a tanker and ruptured a diver. She'd always been a violent woman, but after the accident she went worse, until finally one night in a public house of ill repute, I saw her lying on the floor in a pool of cheap gin and Britvic. And 6 big men were kicking her and hitting her with bar stools. One of my neighbours said, "Are you going to help?" I said, "No, 6 of them should be enough." On top of all that, 3 weeks later, late one evening, the wife arrived home from her Stormtroopers reunion hot pot dinner and tombola. She was the worst for drink. She stood there swaying in her Africa Corps bush jacket, firing off a Luger into the cat's cinders. She hurled abuse at me as well as her jackboots and told me that she was leaving me for good. And she left. Last thing I heard, she drew out her family allowance and went to invade Poland. Can you imagine my dilemma? Alone with the kids. For I've got 3 children, one of each. It was a struggle bringing those kids up. The only way I could make ends meet was by putting 2 of them in the same nappy. Oh, I knew I was scraping the bottom, but this was ridiculous. Even my iron resolve broke. I remember it was one winter. It was bitterly cold. It was so cold that brass monkeys were lagging each other. I just felt the need to talk to somebody. I went to see our local doctor. He's not very good. As a matter of fact, he's very old-fashioned. In fact, when he lances a ball, he does it on horseback. Unbidden, I began to pour out my troubles to him. I happened to mention in passing that whenever the wife nagged or shouted at me, I could never understand a word she uttered. I said, "What sort of a complaint is that, doctor?" He said, "It's not a complaint, it's a bloody gift." It was then that I decided to pull myself together, square my shoulders, and face life's cruel rebuffs. And I went home, and as if in answer to my courage, The wife had returned. She was in the kitchen doing me supper. I could tell she was cooking because I could see through the black smoke. Oh, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying she burns everything, but we lay the table with an altar cloth. It was as if our marriage was reborn. She came rushing out. She had her hands outstretched. And she had a come-to-bed look on her face. She'd taken her teeth out. Her mother had reformed. She was working again, doing stunts on the wall of death. And I sat there while the kids mugged me, and I thought, everything's back to normal, just as it was. And at that moment in time, a new feeling came over me that I'd never experienced before. Sick. I did it my way. There's a place for us somewhere, a place for us. Hold my hand, and we're halfway there. Take my hand, and I'll take you there. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, as the words of the song suggest, for all of us somewhere, there is a place. For the majority of people, despite creed or colour, that place means a home of one's own. A material dream to cherish, to build on. A nest to raise the fledglings of the family dynasty. A beckoning refuge in a world so often shrouded with hostility. Like so many couples when I first got married, we had nowhere to stay. We couldn't afford a place of our own, so we had to live with the wife's mother. And I can honestly say, we were there for over 6 months, and I only fell out with that woman 3 times. Morning, noon, and night. I wouldn't say we didn't get on, but they wrote a television series based on our relationship. It was called Mission Impossible. She didn't have tonsils, she had a fan belt. Everything I touched, she played holy hell. She'd stand there and glare at me like a frustrated moose. She'd fold her arms like 2 sides of gammon. Mouth like a workhouse oven. Said, don't you touch anything of mine. You leave things alone. For instance, that television set, that's mine. It's paid for, it's not rental. I'll select the programs. I'll switch the set on and off, not you. And another thing. Don't you just turn the immersion heater on when you feel like it, willy-nilly. Immersion heaters cost money. It's 2 kilowatts. I'll put it on. You give me 2 days' notice. And another thing. Don't think you can go in the kitchen and put the kettle on when you like. That's an expensive kettle. It's a Russell Hobbs from my catalogue. If anything wants doing here, I'll do it. One night she went to the cinema. I phoned up and they flashed a message on the screen, telling her to come home straight away. She cantered back faster than the railway horse that's been retrieved at the knackers. She stood there, she said, what's wrong? I said, nothing, the fire wants poking. Of course, that was it. That was the end of it. We got thrown out. Baggage and furniture. Furniture. We only had 1 chair. I don't know how old it was, but it carried Hannibal across the Alps. I wasn't sorry to go because A, she's a big woman to tangle with. Well, you can tell she hung her vest up to dry and we lost an hour's daylight. We used to use her drawers for hang gliding. There we were, in our young, early married life, destitute, impoverished. Following day, I went round to see the manager of a building society. I explained my financial position, and I said, how do I stand for a mortgage? He said, you don't stand, son, you grovel. We managed to find a house. It was in a bit of a rough area. In fact, it was so tough, the kid next door shot his parents so he could go on an orphan's picnic. I'll never forget that house. The estate agent said you'll get a lot of pleasure out of it. And he was right. It was always a pleasure to get out of it. The only decent thing we had in that house was cheap air conditioning. Till some fool went and killed the bat. I've never known a house so cold. In winter, it was so cold, the windows used to steam up on the outside. But the dampness was the worst. That house was so damp, we had 3 bedrooms and a jetty. We never told the kids bedtime stories. We used to give them lifeboat drill. The garden was a mess. The grass was so tall, every time a frog jumped, he got a double hernia. To make matters worse, the wife was taking driving lessons, and she wasn't very good. In fact, one night she went through 15 red lights. She said, "Do you think I should have stopped?" I said, "No, you're potty the reds, go for the colours." One night she backed the car into the garden wall. It lay there. I had to have it seen to, obviously. I couldn't sell the premises without that being done. I had 3 estimates, but they were all very expensive. Then one night a little chap came round. He was only small. He had turnips on his overalls. He says, "I will build for you," said, "a wall that will be a constructional Valhalla. A tone poem of inert elegance. A matchless exercise in architectural ostentation. And I won't charge you VAT." So I said, "You can have the job." It took him 3 weeks to build, him and his mate. One night there was 2 of them, they were leaning on each other. I said, "What's wrong?" He said, "We lost our shovels." At the end of the 3 weeks, the wall was a mess. It leaned, it crumbled, it sagged. I said, "That is the worst wall I've ever seen." I said, "Now, I refuse to pay you 1 penny until it's put right." He said, "I stand rebuked." He said, "But I can show you a worse wall than that." I said, "If you can show me a worse wall than that, I will pay you." He said, "Get into my Pantechnicon." I can't touch you for it now, sir. He took me down the corner. I was selling some conduit. In other words, I was going to tube. We're going down the corner. And there was indeed the worst wall I've ever seen. Hell of a mess. I said, "You're quite correct." I said, "That's a worse wall than mine. I shall pay you." I said, "By the way, who built it?" He said, "I did." So just one word of advice to anybody who may be contemplating marriage. You will get the same advice as I did, as everybody else did. And that is, people will say, "There's money in property." Maybe so. You start paying your gas bill with a brick. People who need people are the luckiest people in the world. I'll kill that bloody cat. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, that's what living is all about, being with people, knowing them, loving them. From our early years, it's people who forge the blade of our experience. Some people you can never forget. I can still remember my father looking at me with tears in his eyes and saying, "I can no longer support you, son. You'll have to find your own way in the world." And with that, he gave me a banana and pushed me proud down the M1. Mother was upset. She said, "You can't let him go like that. Give him a list of digs." It was understandable. We were a poor family. In fact, we were so poor, the mice in the pantry were setting traps for us. We couldn't afford coal. In winter, my father sucked a peppermint. We all sat round his tongue. Now and then, we threw Pete on the fire, but he didn't like it. He left home. Dad used to say to me, "One of these days, son, I'll take you away from all this squalor, and we'll live together in Italy, in Venice. And we'll ride up and down all day on the Grand Canal on a Gorgonzola." I said, "But Dad, that's a lump of cheese." He said, "Who the hell cares as long as it doesn't leak?" When we're in trouble, we turn to people. Some years ago, I had a dreadful shock. I hadn't been married very long, and I found that the wife was in fact a deserter from the Black Watch. I should have known something was wrong because we spent our honeymoon doing bayonet drill. Can you imagine how I felt? I was so depressed, I couldn't even laugh at Crossroads. I went to see a wonderful man, a psychiatrist, Dr. Nincompoop. I lay on his couch, I told him my fears, and particularly about the fact that I had this recurrent nightmare that the mother-in-law was chasing me with a crocodile on a lead. How I could smell the hot, rancid breath on the back of my neck. How I could hear the grinding of those great yellow decayed teeth. How I could see the hatred in those cruel primeval eyes. Psychiatrist said, that's terrible. I said, that's nothing. Wait till I tell you about the crocodile. He was very good to me, that man. To soothe my nerves, he encouraged me to smoke a pipe. He even bought me a smoking jacket. I never used it. I couldn't get the sleeves in the bowl. I'll never forget the people I met when I travelled the length and breadth of the country when I was recruiting mercenaries for mother care. She'll never get my Uncle George. He was an actor. For 15 years, he played Little Lord Fauntleroy at the Garstang Rep. And they got fired when his tights split. He was out of work so often that every time they built a new labour exchange, they called him in as a consultant. One night, he was recombing his begging bowl, and an agent offered him 2 words to say in a play, a Shakespearean drama. Unbelievable. The words were, "It is." For 3 months in the soup kitchen, he would worship. It is. It is. It is. It is. The night of the play dawned. The audience hushed into expectancy. The house lights of the theatre dimmed. Uncle George strode onto the podium, threw his cloak round his doublet and hose, put his hand on his dirk, and said, "Is it?" The manager said, "You're fired." He said, "You can't. I know the part backwards." Oh, what a beautiful morning. Oh, what a beautiful day. I've got a wonderful feeling. Everything's going my way. The wife gave me breakfast in bed this morning. It slid off the plate when she threw it. I didn't really mind. There was something strangely erotic about a fried double yolker on quilt. I know why she was annoyed. I'd spilled hot cocoa down the front of a nightdress. Serves me right for wearing it. I got up, I did my morning exercises. Up 1, 2, 3, down 1, 2, 3. Down my other eyelid. But I keep pretty healthy. I get indigestion a lot. I went to see the nurse here at Yorkshire Television. I said, "What's good for wind?" She gave me a kite. Anyway, I got dressed, went into mother-in-law's bedroom. She was sat up in bed, bless her, with tears in her eyes, listening to a record of Hitler's speeches. She didn't see me. She was picking cabbage out of her teeth with her iron cross. Do you know, I felt so good this morning that I told her a funny story and she nearly died laughing. Still, better luck tomorrow. I got downstairs, my little lad came and he said, "Read me a horror story, Dad," so I gave him the mortgage. He's a nice kid, he's a bit of a problem. I know for a fact that he's been kissing the little girl next door because she's got braces on her teeth and he came in the night with his lips stapled. I was a bit annoyed. I said, "Look here, son, you leave that girl alone, she's doubtful." He said, "You're wrong, Dad, she's a dead cert." The wife was stood at the sink and the sunlight was filtering through the kitchen window and dappling the warts on her lip. She had this towel round her head and the remains of a mud pack on her face. She looked like a bilious Gunga Din. She's not a bad wife, really. She's ignorant. Little things like she thought for years that cammy knickers were people who stole soap. I said to her last week, I said, "I see the chap next door's had a vasectomy." She said, "He's only just got rid of a Volvo." man does these things, I'd no need to have married her. I could have let her father shoot me. Actually, I met her at a dance in Harrogate. You know Harrogate, that's Bradford with O-levels. She was in this dance hall and I felt sorry for her. Nobody would dance with her. I'm not saying she was a wallflower, but she was stood in the corner in a bucket of bone meal. We got up to dance and something happened. I felt this tingle run up my leg. She scratched me with her back clips. She said, "Do you think I could win a spot prize?" I said, "Why not? You're covered in them." The thing is about marriage, like everything else, that we go through periods where we get upset. She's been upset just lately because we can't sell our house. It's been up for sale now for 3 months, and the only people who've been round was a couple looking for noughties. We tried to sell it. She's unhappy there, I know that. Just before I got ready to come here tonight, there was a tap on the door. I thought I must have a word with that plumber. I opened the door, there was a chap stood there, very elegantly dressed. Opera cape, top hat, Gallic spats. He was carrying a Malacca cane and a leg of pork, which was unusual as attached to the pig. He spoke in a very well-modulated accent. He said, "I've come here tonight, sir, to view your house with the prospect of buying it. Mind, I am not known from this area. Despite my accent, I'm Irish." I said, "Oh, really?" He said, "No, O'Donovan." He had a row of military medals on his chest. I said, "Have you been on the front?" He said, "Yes." I couldn't get the answer, so I came round the back. There was something about his attitude I instantly disliked. He said, "Have you got dryer up?" I said, "No, it's the way the wife finds me shirts." We stood in the kitchen. He said, "It's very drafty in here." I said, "It's bound to be. It's made of breeze block." He looked into the lounge. He said, "It's very nice in here." He said, "Did you decorate yourself?" I said, "No, I put it on the walls." He said, "Are you married?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Have you got a child?" I said, "No, the wife's a grown woman." He said, "I'm afraid that this house is far beneath my station. He said, I'm used to a much more elegant lifestyle than this." He said, "I lived in a Jacobean manor house. It was a marvellous house. And 200 acres of deer park, croquet lawns, an anthill golf course, ornamental lakes. And the house itself was a tribute to stability in a changing world. There was a hint of Gothic on the east wing battlements. A wisp of Georgian staircase took you to the armoury and a stone, mullioned windowed library, the finest books, which overlooked the servants' quarters, stabling yards. And the whole effect was one of belonging to a generation that's now gone. Down below, a stone-flagged corridor led to the reception room, the music room, and to a great hall which was festooned with heraldry, and also panelled with Burmese mahogany. Outside the front portal sat 2 marble lions, gazing in stony contemplation on the contemporary scene. I said, "What a lovely house. What happened to it?" He said, "It fell down."